The Christmas Cuckoo by Frances Browne, adapted for the reading tree. Once upon a time, there stood in the midst of a bleak moor in the north country a certain village. All its inhabitants were poor, for their fields were barren, and they had little trade. But the poorest of them all were two brothers called Scrub and Spare. They followed the cobbler's craft. Their hut was built of clay and wattles. The door was low and always open, for there was no window. The roof did not entirely keep out the rain, and the only thing comfortable was a wide fireplace for which the brothers could never find wood enough to make sufficient fire. There, in their hut, they worked in the most brotherly friendship, though with little encouragement. On one unlucky day, a new cobbler arrived in the village. He had lived in the capital city of the kingdom, and by his own account, cobbled for the queen and the princesses. His awls were sharp, his lasts were new. He set up his stall in a neat cottage with 2 windows. The villagers soon found out that one patch of his would outwear 2 other brothers. In short, all the new mending left Scrub and Spare and went to the new cobbler. The season had been wet and cold. Their barley did not ripen well, and the cabbages never half closed in the garden, so the brothers were poor that winter. And when Christmas came, they had nothing to feast on but a barley loaf and a piece of rusty bacon. Worse than that, the snow was very deep, and they could get no firewood. Their hut stood at the end of the village. Beyond it spread the bleak moor, now all white and silent. But that moor had once been a forest. Great roots of old trees were still to be found in it, loosened from the soil and laid bare by the winds and rains. One of these, a rough, gnarled log, lay hard by the door, the half of it above the snow, and Spare said to his brother, "Shall we sit here cold on Christmas while this great root lies yonder? Let us chop it up for firewood. The work will make us warm." "No," said Scrub. "It's not right to chop wood on Christmas. Besides, that root is too hard to be broken with any hatchet." "Hard or not, we must have a fire," replied Spare. "Come, brother, help me in with it. Poor as we are, there's nobody in the village who will have such a Yule log as ours." Scrub liked a little grandeur, and in hopes of having a fine Yule log, both brothers strained and strove with all their might, till, between pulling and pushing and shoving, the great old root was safe on the hearth, and beginning to crackle and blaze with the red embers. In high glee the cobblers sat down to their bread and bacon. The door was shut, for there was nothing but cold moonlight and snow outside, but the hut, strewn with fir boughs and ornamented with holly, looked cheerful as the ruddy blaze flared up and rejoiced their hearts. Then suddenly from out the blazing root they heard, "Cuckoo, cuckoo!" As plain as ever the spring bird's voice came over the moor on a May morning. "What is that?" said Scrub, terribly frightened. It's something bad, isn't it?" "Maybe not," said Spare, and out of the deep hole at the side of the root, which the fire had not yet reached, flew a large grey cuckoo, and lit on the table before them. Much as the cobblers had been surprised, they were still more so when it said, "Good gentlemen, what season is this?" It's Christmas," said Spare. "Then a Merry Christmas to you," said the cuckoo. "I went to sleep in the hollow of that old root one evening last summer, and never woke till the heat of your fire made me think it was summer again. But now, since you've been burning my lodging, let me stay in your hut till the spring comes. I only want a hole to sleep in, and when I go on my travels next summer, be assured I will bring you some present for your trouble." "Oh, do stay, and you're welcome," said Spare, while Scrub sat wondering if it was something bad or not. "I'll make you a good warm hole in the thatch," said Spare, "but you must be hungry after that long sleep. Here's a slice of barley bread. Come help us to keep Christmas." The cuckoo ate up the slice, drank water from a brown jug, and flew into the snug hole which Spare had scooped for it in the thatch of the hut. Scrub said he was afraid it wouldn't be lucky, but as it slept on and the days passed, he forgot all his fears. So the snow melted, the heavy rains came, the cold grew less, the days lengthened, and one sunny morning the brothers were awakened by the cuckoo shouting its own cry to them to let them know the spring had come. "Now I'm going on my travels," said the bird. "I'm going all over the world to tell men of the spring. There's no country where the trees bud or flowers bloom that I will not cry in before the year goes round. Give me another slice of barley bread to help me on my journey, and tell me what present I shall bring you at the 12-month's end." Scrub would have been angry with his brother for cutting so large a slice, their store of barley being so low, but his mind was occupied with what present it would be most prudent to ask for. "There are 2 trees hard by the well that lies at the world's end," said the cuckoo. "One of them is called the golden tree, for its leaves are all of beaten gold. Every winter they fall into the well with a sound like scattered coins, and I know not what becomes of them. As for the other, it's always green like a laurel. Some call it the wise tree, and some call it the merry tree. Its leaves never fall, but they that get one of them keep a blithe heart in spite of all misfortunes, and can make themselves as merry in a hut as in a palace." "Good Master Cuckoo, bring me a leaf of that tree," cried Spare. "Now, brother, don't be a fool," said Scrub. "Think of the leaves of beaten gold. Dear Master Cuckoo, bring me one of them." Before another word could be spoken, the cuckoo had flown out of the open door and was shouting its spring cry over moor and meadow. The brothers were poorer than ever that year. Nobody would send them a single shoe to mend, and Scrub and Spare would have left the village but for their barley field and their cabbage garden. They sowed their barley, planted their cabbages, and now that their trade was gone, they worked in the villagers' fields to make out a scanty living. So the seasons came and passed. Spring, summer, harvest and winter followed each other as they've done from the beginning of time. At the end of the latter, Scrub and Spare had grown so poor and ragged that their old neighbours forgot to invite them to a wedding feast or merrymakings in the village, and the brothers thought the cuckoo had forgotten them. When at daybreak on the first day of April they heard a hard beak knocking at their door and a voice crying, "Cuckoo, cuckoo, let me in with my presents." Spare ran to open the door, and in came the cuckoo, carrying on one side of its bill a golden leaf larger than that of any tree in the north country, and on the other side of its bill one like that of the common laurel, only it had a fresher green. "Here," it said, giving the gold to Scrub and the green to Spare. "It is a long carriage from the world's end. Give me a slice of barley bread, for I must tell the north country that the spring has come." Scrub did not grudge the thickness of that slice this time, though it was cut from their very last loaf. So much gold had never been in the cobbler's hand before, and he could not help exulting over his brother. "See the wisdom of my choice," he said, holding up the large leaf of gold. "As for yours, as good might be plucked from any hedge. I wonder a sensible bird would carry the like so far." "Good Master Cobbler," cried the cuckoo, finishing his slice, "your conclusions are more hasty than courteous. If your brother is disappointed this time, I will go on the same journey every year, and for your hospitable entertainment will think it no trouble to bring each of you whichever leaf you desire." "Darling cuckoo," cried Scrub, "bring me a golden one." And Spare, looking up from the green leaf on which he gazed as though it were a crown jewel, said, "Be sure to bring me one from the merry tree." And away flew the cuckoo. "This is the feast of all fools, and it ought to be your birthday," said Scrub. "Did ever man fling away such an opportunity of getting rich? Much good your merry leaves will do in the midst of rags and poverty." But Spare laughed at him, and answered with quaint old proverbs concerning the cares that come with gold, until Scrub, at length, getting rather angry, vowed his brother was not fit to live with a respectable man, and taking his lasts, his alls, and his golden leaf, he left the wattle hut, and went to tell the villagers. They were astonished at the folly of Spare, and rather charmed with Scrub's good sense, particularly when he showed them the golden leaf, and told that the cuckoo would bring him one every spring. The new cobbler immediately took him into partnership. The greatest people sent them their shoes to mend, and a beautiful village maiden called Fairweather smiled graciously upon Scrub, and in the course of that summer they were married, with a grand wedding feast at which the whole village danced except Spare, who was not invited, because the bride could not bear his low-mindedness, as she called it, and his own brother thought him a disgrace to the family. As for Scrub, he established himself with Fairweather in a cottage close by that of the new cobbler, and quite as fine. There he mended shoes to everybody's satisfaction. He had a scarlet coat and a fat goose for dinner on holidays. Fairweather, too, had a crimson gown and fine blue ribbons, but neither she nor Scrub was content. For to buy this grandeur, the golden leaf had to be broken and parted with piece by piece, so the last morsel was gone long before the cuckoo came with another. Spare lived on in the old hut and worked in the cabbage garden. Scrub had got the barley field because he was the elder. Every day his coat grew more ragged and the hut more weather-beaten, but people remarked that he never looked sad or sour, and the wonder was that, from time to time, anyone who began to keep his company, he or she grew kinder, happier, and more content. Every 1st of April, the cuckoo came tapping at their doors with the golden leaf for Scrub and the green for Spare. Fairweather would have entertained it nobly with wheaten bread and honey, for she had some notion of persuading it to bring 2 golden leaves instead of 1. But the cuckoo flew away to eat barley bread with Spare, saying it was not fit company for fine people, and like the old hut where it slept so snugly from Christmas till spring. Scrub spent the golden leaves, and remained always discontented, and Spare kept the merry ones. I do not know how many years passed in this manner, when a certain great lord who owned that village came to the neighbourhood. His castle stood on the moor. It was ancient and strong, with high towers and a deep moat. All the country, as far as one could see from the highest turret, belonged to its lord. But he had not been there for 20 years, and would not have come then, only he was melancholy, and there he lived in a very, very bad temper. The servants said nothing would please him, and the villagers put on their worst clothes lest he should raise their rents. But one day, in the harvest time, his lordship chanced to meet Spare, gathering watercresses at the meadow stream, and fell into talk with the old cobbler. How it was, nobody could tell, but from that hour the great lord cast away his melancholy. He forgot all his woes, and went about with a noble train, hunting, fishing, and making merry in his hall, where all travellers were entertained, and even the poor were welcome. This strange story spread through the north country, and great company came to the cobbler's hut, rich men who had lost their money, poor men who had lost their friends, beauties who had grown old, wits that had gone out of fashion, all came to talk with Spare, and whatever their troubles had been, all went home merry. The rich gave him presents, the poor gave him thanks. Spare's coat ceased to be ragged, he had bacon with his cabbage, and the villagers began to think there was some sense in him after all. By this time his fame had reached the capital city, and even the court. There were a great many discontented people there, and the king had lately fallen into ill humour, because, A neighbouring princess, with 7 islands for her dowry, would not marry his eldest son. So a royal messenger was sent to Spare with a velvet mantle, a diamond ring, and a command that he should repair to the court immediately. "But tomorrow is the 1st of April," said Spare. "I will go with you 2 hours after sunrise." The messenger lodged all night at the castle, and the cuckoo came at sunrise with a merry leaf. "Court is a fine place," it said, when the cobbler told him he was going. "But I cannot come there. They would lay snares, and they would catch me. So do be careful of the leaves I have brought you, and give me a farewell slice of barley bread." Spare was sorry to part with the cuckoo, little as he had of its company, but he gave it a slice which would have broken Scrub's heart in former times. It was so thick and large, and having sewn up the leaves in the lining of his leather doublet, he set out with the messenger on his way to court. His coming caused a great surprise there. Everybody wondered what on earth the king could see in such a common-looking man, but scarcely had his majesty conversed with him half an hour, when the princess and her 7 islands were quite forgotten, and orders were given that a feast for all comers should be prepared in the banquet hall. The princes of the blood, the great lords and ladies, the ministers of state, after that discoursed with Spare, and the more he talked, the lighter grew their hearts, so that such changes had never been seen at court. The lords forgot their spites, and the ladies their envies. The princes and ministers made friends among themselves, and the judges showed no favour. As for Spare, he had a chamber assigned him in the palace, and a seat at the king's table. One sent him rich robes, and another costly jewels. But in the midst of all his grandeur, he still wore the leather doublet, and continued to live at the king's court, happy and honoured, and making all others merry and content from one Christmas to the next.